Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Menachot daf Kuf. We are going to begin on Kuf Amud Aleph by the Mishnah. Daf 100. Seder es halechem b'Shabbos, v'esabazichin la'achar Shabbos. Now, before we read the incorrect way of doing it, we have to remind ourselves that yesterday we saw the Mishnah that told us you had Kohanim that brought the bezichin, the frankincense, the spoonfuls, together with the two sets of 6 lechem apanim, 12. It was brought on Shabbos. Another group of Kohanim removed it, and the other ones put it back. The question is, was there any delay in between putting it back? But it was all done on Shabbos. Also on Shabbos, they would put the lechem hapanim on this golden shulchan after it was removed, while they were maktir the bezichin, when they were the frankincense, and then afterwards it was divided on Shabbos. Everything was done on Shabbos. This is the proper way of doing it, which means that the breads were there for a full week, the frankincense were there for the entire 7 days as well, and everything was done Shabbos to Shabbos. So now let's understand these incorrect methods, and the Mishnah gives us 3 of them. So Seder says Shulchan b'Shabbos, v'esa b'zichin la'achar Shabbos. So you did correctly, the lechem apanim was put on the shulchan on Shabbos. However, the bezichin were put on Sunday, which is not correct. Which means what ended up happening was the bezichin were only there for 6 days. So, and then v'hikter es ha-bezichin b'Shabbos. So basically that's what happened. The next Shabbos, you did it correctly then by being makter it on Shabbos, but the problem is that it should have been there the Shabbos before. Instead it was Sunday, impossible. Because again, it wasn't there for the whole week. As Rashi says, the mechusar zmanhu shul hayal shulchan el shisha yomim was only there for 6 days. We'll see the rest of that Rashi in a second. However, you haven't violated anything. Says Rashi. Now he says, there's no way you could do anything with this bezichin. Okay, it's been 6 days, so just keep it for another 7 days. Can't do that. Because since the breads were put properly on Shabbos, so therefore the table became sanctified those breads. So it has to be the right amount of time. Otherwise, it's possibilina after the 7th day. So therefore, you can't keep it for 13 days. Therefore, it's just not good. Next case in the Mishnah: Seder es halechem v'esa bezichin b'Shabbos. You did everything right. You put the bread and the bezichin on Shabbos. However, the hikter es bezichin l'achar Shabbos. Psula. So what ended up happening? That it was there for 8 days. It was there too long. Now, also over here, you have not violated pigul of time. So let's look at this Rashi. Pigul is im hiktirin. If you're makter al manasel echel min halechem lamachar, you're gonna eat it tomorrow. In a pigul shul karv hamakter k'mitzvasai. Also nicer she'ein nicer chal al halechem shar ein roy lachila. It's not fit to be eaten. And also tamei ha'oichel b'tumas aguf. If while you were tamei you ate it, ein b'karis. You're not gonna be chayav karis either. Now, again, in this situation, you haven't violated anything. However, Seder Salechem Esabazichin Lachar Shabbos, let's say you did everything wrong, right? You didn't put the lechem on there on Shabbos. It was done Lachar Shabbos, and also the Bezichin. You did everything on a Sunday. V'hikter Esabazichin Shabbos, and then you were marked the Bezichin the following week for only 6 days. Now it's psul, so of course that's not good. But here's the interesting eitzah. You are allowed to actually keep it for another week. Now, why? How is that allowed? Because since the lechem and the bezichin were put on the shulchan on the wrong time, they didn't achieve kedushas aguf. So because it has to be done on Shabbos, instead it was done on Shabbos, so there's no kedushas aguf, and therefore there's no isser of lien over here. She'afilu hi al hashulchan yomim rabim min b'kaklum. It doesn't make any difference. The fact it's there, because it doesn't take upon itself any sanctity until that next Shabbos. So you can actually keep it there that whole next week, and you can do it again the following Shabbos, which is a pretty amazing statement. The third is a huge chiddush we're going to get to. So Tanan Hasam, we're in the mission Masechtas Yom as follows. So they used to announce to the person, Surui, go and check out Im Hagia Zman Shchita. Has it reached the time of Shchita for the carbon tamid? Is it morning yet? Im Hagia Haraya Imer Barkoi. They'll say yes, which is another way of saying that the Ha'ir Hayoim, that the day is lit, we could actually do something. Now we can start the avoda. Vasatya ben Shmuel Imer Her Pnei Kol Mizrach Ad Shebechevron. They would say, is it lit up all the way until Chevron? And the Gemara over there in Yuma says, why are you talking about Chevron? Is to remind us of the Schus Avos and Hashem of the Schus Avos. But when we're saying yes. So once it was, they got light from the moon, Vadima Shehir Mizrach, and they thought it was Taka the light. They thought it was the next day already. It was still dark out. It was very, very bright outside. Because on the 10th day of the month, which is when Yom Kippur is, so the moon is out. It's almost a full moon on the 15th, but it's a decent sized moon which can give a lot of light. So Shachto Esatamid V'Hoitziu L'Beis Asreifa. So they ended up having to burn it, right? That's why they had to go up to the roof and do all this stuff. As Rashi says, Shepasol Hoylafi Shenishcha B'Layla. You shot it at night, and the pasuk says B'Yom Zivchachem. It has to be done during the day. So Baharidu Kohen Gadol L'Beis HaTefillah, and the Kohen went to the mikveh. Okay. Anyway, so Zekla Hayib Mikdash Kol Hamaseches Raglav. Anytime a person had to use the bathroom, Toin Tefillah, so they had to be toivel themselves. The whole Hamatul Mayim Toin Kiddush Dam Raglayim. Anyone who is Matul Mayim, then all you have to do is, you don't have to be toivel yourself if you went to the bathroom, but you're to a different level of going to the bathroom. But if you're just matul mayim, you pass water, then you have to wash your hands and feet. So Tani Avoda be Rav Oven Lozu Bavad El Afil Oil Sa'of. Even when it comes to a bird, She Nimlaka B'Layla. So not just by a behema, but also a bird. If you do malika at night, Umancha Mincha She Nikmatza B'Layla, or you did the mincha at night, because it's not just by shchitas behema, it's also by an oaf as well as a mincha. It has to be done during the day. Now bishlam also oaf mishum dol efsher lahadura. I understand there's nothing else you can do. It's dead now, and you can't re-kill it, right? So obviously you have no eitzah. El mincha efsher the mahadir kaimitzel duchte v'kamitz b'yomei. Why don't you just put everything back to where it was? Just put it right back in. It says Rashi, afil oil so oaf mincha. The lav carbon choshevu. The in boyin but sibor im nasubul laila yosef esasreifa. So why don't we say mekachin v'zesh shekamatz v'nasa the kaimitz b'kli after the laila lav zaman kiddushu mekudish haya. Okay, we'll hold off on a second. He answers hu tani lavu hu armil. He answers kli sharis is mekachin shloi bizmanon, that it develops kedushas aguf even if it's not at the right time. Now let's see Rashi. V'zesh shekamatz. Even though you did it at night, but Nelson comes bekli. Once you put into a klisharis, after the laila loves man kiddushu. Even though you're not supposed to do it at night, you're supposed to wait until the morning. Mekadishly kli. The kli will still mekadish the flour to make it into kedushas aguf. Veshuv ef shul arbo b'shirayim. So now it's the rest of it is shirayim is left over. You can't then take the kaimitz and put it back into the shirayim and mix it all together. It's already been separated. It has to remain separated. So therefore, you have no eitzah except l'beis reifa. Okay, so meisvei. Kol kar b'yoyim kadosh b'yoyim. Any thing, like for example, stam karbanos, where you're makriv during the day, so the day will be mekadosh. If you put into a kli sharis during the day, it'll be mekadosh it. B'layla, for example, minchas nesachim, which can be done at night, which is done at night. Kadosh b'layla. So if it's done at night, so then it becomes sanctified at night. Ben 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 b'layla, kiddush ben 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 b'layla. Something which can be done day and night. So then either way, kol kar b'yoyim kadosh b'yoyim in b'layla lo. It's mashma. Anything that's supposed to be done during the day, which would include a mincha, right? It only becomes sanctified if you put it into a kli sharis during the day, not at night. So therefore, the shaila is, what is it? What are you talking about? that it's still Mekadosh in a Kli. It's at night. So our answer is Enu Kaddish L'Karov of a Kaddish L'Psul. We had this splitting of the hairs in numerous other places. In other words, it is enough to be Kaddish to passel it, now it'll be an Isser of Lina, but it will not be enough that you can be Makrab. It's true that the Kli Shoros is Mekadosh to Kedushas Aguf, this Mincha, not that you can now be Mekadosh, you can actually use this Kmitza. You can't be Makrab, but it's enough to at least, it'll passel, even though it's done at night. So Ma'aser Reb Zera, Seidos Alechem, V'Esa B'Zichin Achar Shabbos. So the third case of our Mishnah, the Sefer of our Mishnah, where you did everything on a Sunday, V'Hikter Esa B'Zichin Shabbos, but you actually did the B'Zichin on Shabbos, so Psul, so Keita Oisa. So our Mishnah gave an Eitzah. You could do something about it because it didn't develop Kedushas Aguf. So we said Yani Chenu Shabbos Haba. Shafil Hiel Shochin Yamim Rabim Ein B'Kach Klum. It's not a problem. Navi Zagadat Achli Sheres Mekachin Shom Bizmanon. So 1 second. If we said by the mincha that it was supposed to be done during the day, it was done at night with a kli sharos, the kli sharos will still be mekadosh the flour to passel it. So then why don't we say the same thing over here? Why don't we say livsol l'kiddush livsol? Why don't we say the shulchan that when the lechem upon him and the bezichim were put on Sunday? So we should say, even though it was done at the wrong time, just like the mincha was done at the wrong time, it was done at night, not the day. So this was done on Sunday, not on Shabbos. Then the shulchan should still be mekadosh to passel it. So then you shouldn't have this eitzah being able to keep it on. That shouldn't work. So we said, so there's a difference between the two. So this is a good question. Which is a beautiful vort. Now what does that mean? That night is not mechusar zman, says Rashi. The night goes after the day. Hilkach. Mekadosh le kli sharis l'kaimitz dizmanahu elishein avoidas laila kshera. Just a technicality that, let's say you had to wait a few days, whatever it was, to bring a carbon. So now you have to wait until the next day. Let's say the 8th day, for example, for certain carbonos. So you can't do it that night before, but it's not because there's it's mechusar zman, which it seems logically that you haven't reached the time of when you can do it. But technically, you should be able to do it because it's the 8th day already, because it's already the night time, which is the 8th day technically. But we have to wait until the literally daytime on the 8th day. So therefore, the truth is, when it comes to Laila, it's ein mechusar zman. So the point is like this: when we're dealing with the mincha, even though you're supposed to have done it during the day, but if that was done at night, so there's a technicality that you can't be makar of it during the day, during the nighttime. But it's still enough that if you put into the klisharis, it's mekadosh it, b'kedushas aguf, the passel it. Masha'inkin, when it comes to this case, by the lechem upon him, it's a totally different day. Instead of it being done on Saturday, you did it on Sunday. So that certainly will not be enough to passel it, and therefore you have this eitzah of our Mishnah. Hayomim mechusar zman. The day is mechusar zman, which is the reason why you can't. There's no kedushas aguf by our case. So saif as we continue the kufim and bays at the end of the day, kimati leile. Okay, fine, you're right. So there's no kedushas aguf. But what we have established is the night before still takes upon itself this kedusha. So the problem is that now the bread's been there for a long time. Okay, it's Friday night. Tomorrow we can finally do it correct. We messed up last time. Let's do it correctly, as the Mishnah says. But if it's there Friday night, and technically it has the ability to be passel, then it should be an Isser Lina. Once it's there Friday night, that night before, finally when you're able to do it. Because that Friday night is now linked to the day in which it could be done, and therefore the fact that it's there Friday night extra, that should be a psulina. So the Gemara gives two answers. This is a Gemara we've seen in many places. Omer Rava b'shekadam v'silik. You're right. On Friday night you need to take it off and then put it back on Saturday. So there has to be a little bit of time. And again, according to Rabbi Yosi, there's no issue of Talmud. Marzutra v'yitem Rav Ashi Amri Afil Atem Rabbi Shloik Kadam Basilik you don't have to worry about it. Kivan desidur shlukim mitzvasai, since it was put on Sunday improperly, nasa kimi shesidur hakaif. It's like it was put on like a monkey. Says Rashi, "Man shulchan mekadsho afil bizmano abul kaimitz mitzvaso chashiva leida laila in b'chus zman." When it came to the mincha, it was done at night, which was linked to the next day. But over here, it was done on Sunday, which is a totally wrong day. So it's like an animal put it on. So it literally does not take upon itself any caduceus gift, even on Friday night. There's not going to be any iser of psulina, which therefore that explains the lashon of this Mishnah makes a lot more sense according to the second answer. It says Shivil Hiel Shulchan Yomim Rabim. It doesn't even give the eitzah. It's logically you would do it the next Shabbos, but it's not so clear from the Mishnah that it has to even be done the next Shabbos. Obviously, that's what one would practically do. Question 1. Seder Salechem is a bezichan achar Shabbos. Case the yatzeh nechanel Shabbos haba. Madul ma di amr laila ein b'chosar zman ein halechem kodesh lifsul b'leil Shabbos Friday night, right? On this Friday night, so that was the question. So either that you took it off and put it back, or kivan shesidu shulk mitzvason, since it was done improperly, it's like a kof. This is actually kofom and base, not really kofom and aleph. Okay, fine. Question TB22. Lechem shesidu achar Shabbos and Shabbos haba madul bisel b'layil achar shavar leil Shabbos, which is the same question as question 1. This is TB22. So let's see what I wrote over here. This is kofum and beis. Sarach lahagbiya es halechem kaidim ve'im lo asa ze yesh iserlina. Beautiful. Lo sarach hayel shenina harishayna haisa shlo kahigin ze kamon nesinas hakayf v'lo nifsel belina. Beautifully written. Okay, let's finish this parak. Let's get to the next Mishnah first. So shtei alechem nechalois. When it comes to the shtei alechem on Shavuos in pachas mishnayim, it's never going to be around for less than 2 days. V'lo yoyser al shlosh, not more than 3. So Ketzad, why is that? So nefos me'erev Yom Tov. So on Erev Shavuos, we bake the Shtei Alechem. We don't bake it on Shabbos, or we don't bake it on Yom Tov. It's not Daicha Yom Tov. So you do it on Erev Yom Tov, and then the Chalos Yom Tov L'Shnayim. And therefore, you bake it the day before, and you eat it the next day, on Pesach itself. On Shavuos itself, excuse me. However, if let's say Yom Tov is on Sunday, so obviously you can't bake it on Shabbos, so you have to bake it on Friday, so therefore it's 3 days. Lechem Aponim, which is from Shabbos to Shabbos, which in itself, Saturday to Saturday is 8 days, counting the day itself. So Nechol, Inopachas Matesha, it's never less than 9. V'lo yoser al achadas, not more than 11. So Ketzad. Nofim Erev Shabbos, again, the Lechem upon him and the Shtei HaLechem are not Daicha Shabbos, they're not Daicha Yom Tov. So therefore it has to be baked on Erev Yom Tov, on Friday. V'nechol b'Shabbos Latisha. So therefore from Friday, counting Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to Saturday is 9 days. Chol Yom Tov Yoser Erev Shabbos. If Yom Tov is on Friday, so then you have to bake it on Thursday. So Nechol Lasara ends up becoming 10 days. Shnei Yomim Tamish Rosh Hashanah. So when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, in which is before Shabbos, so therefore Nechol La'achad Aser, because if it's Rosh Hashanah is on a Thursday, Friday, so you have to bake it on Wednesday, and then it ends up being 11. V'enadaychos the Shabbos will say Yom Tiv. It's not Daicha, as we just said. So Rabbi Shimon Oimer, Misham Rabbi Shimon ben Hasagan, Daichas Yom Tiv, V'enadaychas Yom Tzayin. Actually, it is Daicha Yom Tiv, but not Yom HaKippurim. Why? Says Rashi, Chal Yom HaKippurim be'erev Shabbos ein lechem aponim nefbo. So you can't bake it on Yom Kippur, but you can bake it on Yom Tiv. Okay. So Omer Avinu l'divrei ha'imim nedarim nedarim saying korivin b'Yom Tiv. According to the Shita in Masechtas Beya, it's a machlokus over there, whether you can be makriv and bring the karbanos, which are a neder and a dava, free will offerings, lo tema midaraisa mechzik chazu. It doesn't mean that midaraisa it's okay, v'rabbanan hu de gazer shel yisha, but it's only just a din d'rabbanan, because we don't want you to delay the bringing of karbanos. Says Rashi, karbanos kol hashana shehu naidav and naidav v'lo yakrivim ad a regel, because like, oh, I'm going to Yerushalayim for Pesach anyway. So I know it's only December. I'm not going to do it now. So we don't want you to delay. So therefore, we end up saying, don't bring the Darim Nedavos, not because really there's anything wrong with bringing the Darim Nedavos on Yom Tov, but we just don't want people to end up just delaying, and they'll end up maybe not as it says over here, Umamtin Malacha ad Hamoyed V'Oid Shema Yaver B'Bal Ta'acher. So there's a couple logic reasons that Isser B'Al Ta'acher, if a certain amount of holidays go by, it's Machlokes exactly how that's calculated. Or just again, we don't want you to end up doing malach, which you don't need to do. Okay, el midaraisa nam yuluchosu. You can't even do it's a din deraisa. Why? The hashdei lechem the chavos hayomhu. Because when it comes to the shtei lechem on Shavuos, it's a chiyuv. You have to have it. Obviously, it's a matter for wheat, for karbanos and etc., which is chadash. V'leiko memer shemi yisha. It's not an issue of shemi yisha over there because. Where it says Rashi, Shar Ein Yachol Lakrivam El Bo B'Yoyim, has to be done that day. V'Katani Inu Deichel is the Shabbos was a Yom Tov. Okay, let's see question TA 19. Matzach in the Darman Davos Ein Krivan B'Yom Tov Hu Rak Min Rabbanan Uma Harayid Ein Krivan Min HaTorah. So as we said, maybe it's a Din de Rabbanan. TB TA 19, Shemi Yisha Karbanaisav, but the Raya is from the Shtei Lechem in Deichen Yom Tov, even though it's a mitzvah Bobi Yoyim, V'lo Shaykh Mehen Shemi Yisha. You can't possibly say Shemi Yisha over there because there's no other opportunity for it to have been done. It's also question 2, but we'll get to question 2 in a second. So this is TA 19. Pardon me. So maybe Shemi Yisha, but we know it's not the case because the Shtei Halechem is the Chiv Yom, and you can't possibly say Yisha. Nonetheless, it's not Deichel Shabbos Yom Tov. So it's a Raya. It's a Din Deraisa. Okay, let's look at question 2. Or maybe so mahashash, what's the problem? So there's 2 answers. One is we said because maybe you're over bal ta'acher, or that maybe you'll wait and you mechaven malach to b'moyed, and we don't want you to start doing work on Chol HaMoed or on Yom Tov, so therefore we say you can't do it. Hanulach shtei halechem, hanulach shtei halechem, hanulach shtei halechem. We'll continue with the next Mishnah, next parak. Habanachos of Nesachim shenitmu, the din of a mincha and Nesachim that become tamei. We'll see it then tomorrow. Adkan.